Welcome back. Today, we're jumping right back into the NFAE methodology. It's a fantastic framework designed to help us align all the amazing work we do in non-formal adult education with recognized standards. And we are starting exactly where all great teaching should begin, with the people. So, let's explore these first two foundational steps that put your learners, not the paperwork, right at the center of everything.
Before you even think about lesson plans or fill out a single form, the methodology asks us all to just pause for a second and think about this one simple but really powerful question. Honestly, this is a bit of a revolutionary idea. Instead of starting with the what, the content, it starts with the who. It immediately shifts our focus from just, ticking boxes to the actual human beings we're here to teach.
And that leads us perfectly into the very first official step of the process. The NFAE methodology kicks off by tapping into a skill that educators like you have already completely mastered, just getting to know your learners.
Now you might be thinking, oh great, another task, more paperwork, but this step is not about adding a new burden. Not at all. It's really about formalizing your instinct. It's about taking that gut feeling, that intuitive understanding you already have about your learners, and just giving it a clear structure. This simple act makes all that professional expertise you have visible, and it builds a super solid foundation for your whole course.
Okay, so this is a really important distinction to make. Step one is not about testing a single student's skills. It's about creating a group profile before the course even kicks off. Think of it like this. You're designing the journey for your typical learner, really getting to grips with their collective needs, their goals, and the barriers they face. This is what shapes the entire course design. That individual assessment, that comes way later to check on their progress.
So, once you have that crystal clear picture of your learner group, well, the next logical step just kind of emerges naturally, figuring out the right level for their learning journey. And that brings us to step 2, estimating the EQF level.
EQF, European Qualifications Framework. I know, it sounds super formal, maybe even a little intimidating, right? But honestly, it's really just a shared reference tool. Think of it as a common language that helps make skills and qualifications easy to understand across all of Europe. It's not some strict rulebook. It's just a helpful guide with 8 different levels.
And the guide suggests thinking of the EQF as a ladder, which is just a brilliant way to picture it. The lower rungs, say levels 1 and 2, that's where you find all the foundational, basic learning. As you start climbing up to the middle rungs, levels 3 to 5, you're expecting learners to have more independence. And then you get to the top rungs, 6 to 8, which represent that advanced, specialized knowledge you'd see in, say, higher education.
This quote from the guide is so key. It really drives home the point that this isn't an exact science. It's about you, the educator, using your professional expertise, your gut, to figure out the best fit for your specific course and your specific learners. But this does bring up a really important question, doesn't it? Does aligning your course to an EQF level mean it's suddenly some formal accredited qualification?
And the answer is a big resounding no. Phew, right? And this is such a critical clarification. Aligning your course is all about transparency. It's about taking the incredible learning happening in your classroom and making it visible, making it understood in a much bigger context. It doesn't magically turn your non-formal course into a university degree. And honestly, that's a really freeing and important distinction to make.
Okay, so theory is great, but how does this stuff actually work in the real world? Let's take a look at a fantastic case study from the pilot program in Spain to see how these first 2 steps really connect on the ground. So the setting for this course was a program focused on socio-labor training. It was specifically created for young people who were, kind of falling through the cracks of the formal education and employment systems. First things first, the educators did exactly what step 1 asks. They defined their learner profile. And they didn't just say, oh, they're young people. No way. They got specific. They were young adults facing exclusion. Many of them were recently arrived migrants. They often had low levels of formal education, and they were dealing with some pretty significant language and cultural barriers.
Now, with that really detailed profile in hand, they could ask the big question for step 2. Given these very specific challenges and needs, what's the right level of learning to aim for? You can totally see how step 1 flows directly into step 2, right?
So, after a lot of careful thought, the educators decided that the best fit for this specific course and this particular group of learners was EQF level 3. But why that level? What made it the right choice?
And here's their reasoning, taken straight from the guide. They picked level 3 because its official description was a perfect match for their goals.
It was all about providing knowledge of general facts, principles, and processes in a specific field. It just clicked. It was the perfect description for the practical, foundational skills they were teaching. A fantastic example of using professional judgment to find that best fit.
All right, let's zoom back out for a second and just wrap our heads around the core idea here. What's the big takeaway from putting these 2 steps right at the beginning of the process?
It really all boils down to this. 1. Always start with the people in your classroom, not the forms on your desk. 2. Trust your expertise. Your professional judgment is literally the most valuable tool you have in this entire process. And finally, number 3, remember the goal here is to take the powerful but often invisible learning that happens in non-formal education and just make it seen and valued by everyone.
And this whole process sets us up perfectly for what comes next. I mean, once you have a solid handle on who your learners are and what level you're targeting, the path forward gets so much clearer. The next piece of the puzzle is to spell out exactly what your learners will be able to do by the end of your course.
So please join us for our next explainer, where we'll get our hands dirty with Step 3 of the NFAE methodology, how to write clear, meaningful, and achievable learning outcomes. We'll see you then.